You can fly now, mother-in-law. I finally found the perfect gift for an old witch like you. The entire living room went still. I felt the stares, the murmurs caught in people's throats, the shock reflected on their faces. I took a deep breath. Thank you, I answered serenely, clutching the broom as if it were a trophy. In that instant, I understood that this wasn't just a ruined birthday. It was the end of years of swallowing my own silence. It was proof that the person who should have respected me chose to expose me to humiliation. And that very night, I made my decision. I would never again be a hostage to cruelty disguised as a joke. My life, my house, my name. They would never be used against me again. On the day of my 68th birthday, I was arranging the final touches for the party when Jessica came in from the street carrying a mysterious bag. My heart filled with hope. Perhaps, finally, my daughter-in-law had thought of something special for me. For 2 years, living in the house that I myself had bought and put in my son Michael's name, I had been trying to win her affection. But Jessica always treated me like a piece of old furniture cluttering up the decor. The party was small, just a few neighbors from our Maple Creek neighborhood and my best friend Patty Davis, who insisted on coming even though she had an injured leg. Michael worked so much at the factory that he barely had time to talk with me, and my little grandkids, Olivia and Noah, always seemed to be very busy with their smartphones. When Jessica approached me in the middle of the living room, with everyone watching, my heart beat faster. "Clara," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "I have a very special gift for you." Everyone stopped talking, waiting for the exciting moment of the gift exchange. When I opened the bag and saw an old, dirty broom, for a second I thought it was a mistake. But Jessica spoke loudly, so everyone could hear. "You can fly now, mother-in-law. I finally found the perfect gift for an old witch like you." The silence that fell over the room was deafening. I saw Patty's face twist with indignation, Olivia lower her head in shame, and Noah pretend he hadn't heard anything. Michael let out a nervous laugh and said, "Oh, come on, Jessica, that's a bit much. It's just a bad joke." In that moment, something inside me awakened. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was a cold, calculating clarity I had never felt before. I took the broom with firm hands, smiled at Jessica, and said, "Thank you, honey. It's exactly what I needed." But what she didn't know was that, the next day, she would be the one needing to find a place to fly to. That night, after everyone had left, I sat in my armchair looking at the broom leaning against the wall. Patty had stayed behind to help me clean up and was watching me with concern. "Clara, my friend," she said softly, "are you okay? What that girl did was a huge sign of disrespect." I told her I was fine, but inside I felt as if something had changed forever. I was no longer the same woman who had arrived at that house 2 years ago, hoping to build a close-knit family. I remembered all the times Jessica had been rude to me, like when she forbade me from using her bathroom because she said I made it too dirty, or when she told the neighbors I was a burden she had inherited by marrying Michael, or when she changed the Wi-Fi password so I couldn't use the internet, and had to ask her for a favor every time I wanted to video chat with my sisters in Phoenix. Each humiliation had been like a drop of water slowly filling a glass, and that broom had been the straw that broke the camel's back. Patty helped me wash the dishes while telling me about her own experiences with difficult daughters-in-law. "Look, Clara," she said, drying a glass. "Sometimes young women don't understand that we were young once too, that we also had dreams and made sacrifices. That Jessica seems to think you were born old and are only here to annoy her." Her words comforted me, but they also made me see that my situation wasn't unique. There were many women my age going through the same thing. After Patty left, I was alone in the kitchen, putting the last things away. The house was silent. Michael and Jessica had already gone to bed, and the kids were in their rooms. It was a big house, 3 bedrooms, with a backyard where I grew my chili peppers and cilantro. A house I had bought with the money my late husband Arthur had left me, thinking it would be the perfect home for my family to grow and be happy. How wrong I had been. I went to my room, which was next to the kids, and sat on the bed to think. On the wall hung pictures of when Michael was a boy, of my wedding to Arthur, of the early years when we were poor but very happy in our little apartment in the Bridgeport neighborhood. Arthur had worked as a mechanic his whole life, getting up at 5 in the morning to get to the shop early. I worked cleaning houses in wealthy neighborhoods like Lincoln Park and the North Shore, saving dollar by dollar to give Michael a good education. When Arthur died 5 years ago, I was left with a modest inheritance. The small house where we had lived our whole lives, some savings tucked under the mattress, and the life insurance money. Michael had just married Jessica, and he begged me to help them buy a bigger house because she was pregnant with Olivia and they needed more space. I sold my little house, gathered all my money, and bought this house thinking we would all live together as a happy family. But from the first day, Jessica made it clear that I was an unwelcome guest in my own home. She changed all the decor without asking me. She assigned me the smallest room, gave me schedules for using the washing machine and the kitchen. When I protested to Michael, he told me to be patient, that Jessica was stressed with the pregnancy and that things would get better with time. But they didn't get better, they got worse. 2 years later, Jessica didn't even pretend to be nice to me anymore. She spoke to me as if I were her maid. She criticized the way I cooked. She complained that my television shows were too loud. Michael worked so much that he was almost never home to see how his wife treated me. And when I told him what was happening, he always said it was surely a misunderstanding, that Jessica was a good woman and that I must be exaggerating. That night, lying in my bed, I decided that enough was enough. I couldn't keep living like this, feeling like an intruder in the house I had paid for. I couldn't keep accepting humiliation just to keep the peace. Arthur always told me I was a strong woman, that I had managed on my own when he died, that I should never let anyone disrespect me. It was time to remember who I really was. The next morning, very early, I got up before everyone else and went to the desk where I kept the family's important documents. 2 years ago, when Michael was desperate with the debts from his wedding and Noah's birth, I was the one who sold my little house and bought this bigger one so he, Jessica, and the children could live comfortably. I put everything in his name because I trusted my son, because I thought it was the right thing to do. Now, looking at the deed, I realized there was a clause that I myself had insisted on at the time. The house would remain in my name until Michael paid a symbolic debt of $50,000 that he owed me. At that moment, I clearly remembered the conversation I had with Mr. Rodriguez when we were drawing up the papers. "Mrs. Peterson," he had said, "are you sure you want to include this clause? It's a bit complicated." I had answered yes, that I wanted to protect myself just in case things didn't turn out as I hoped. How wise I had been without realizing it. I remembered all the times I tried to be a good mother-in-law to Jessica. I cooked her favorite meals, pot roast, lasagna, chicken pot pie when the weather turned cold. I watched the kids when she wanted to go out with her friends on the weekends. I never complained when she rearranged the whole house without consulting me, when she invited her family from Cleveland without telling me, when she used my grocery money to buy herself new clothes. But nothing was ever enough. She always talked about me with her friends as if I were a problem she had inherited. She told the children not to get too attached to Grandma because old people are a lot of work. Last week, I had overheard her telling Michael that I was getting in the way of the family's life and that it was time to put me in a nursing home out in Naperville. "Honey," she had said while he was washing the dishes after dinner, "your mom is getting really old. She can't take care of herself anymore. It would be better for everyone if we put her in a place where they can look after her properly." Michael had been uncomfortable with the conversation, but he didn't defend me. He just said maybe it would be a good idea to check out the available options. During breakfast, when Jessica casually mentioned that she had called a nursing home in the San Angel neighborhood just to take a look, I finally understood that yesterday's humiliation hadn't been a spur-of-the-moment fit of anger. It was part of a plan to make me feel so unwanted that I would ask to leave myself. Michael looked uncomfortable with the conversation, but he didn't defend me. He just said that maybe it would be good to look at the options. Olivia tried to protest, saying she didn't want me to go, but Jessica quickly changed the subject. In the afternoon, when everyone was out, Michael at work, Jessica at the farmer's market, and the kids at school, I called my lawyer, Mr. Rodriguez, the same one who had handled the purchase of the house. I explained the situation, and he told me something that changed everything. "Mrs. Peterson, technically you are still the legal owner of this house. Your son will only receive the final deed when he settles that symbolic debt." In that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. Jessica wanted to see me gone, and she would get her wish. but in a way she never imagined. For the rest of the afternoon, I began to plan my strategy. It wasn't revenge. It was justice. It was reclaiming my dignity and my right to be respected in my own home. If Jessica thought she could humiliate me in front of everyone and then get rid of me like I was trash, she was sorely mistaken. I had worked my whole life. I had raised my son with sacrifice. I had lost my husband. And now, the time had come to show that Clara Peterson was not a helpless old woman who let herself be walked all over. That night, during dinner, I observed each family member with new eyes. Michael talked enthusiastically about work at the factory, oblivious to the tension between his mother and his wife. Olivia and Noah played and laughed, unaware of the adult conflicts. Jessica ate in silence, avoiding my gaze. After dinner, as I was helping to tidy up the kitchen, Jessica approached me, speaking softly so no one would hear, and told me she hoped I wasn't going to do anything rash, that it would be better for everyone if I forgot our morning chat and went back to acting normal. I looked at her with a serene smile and said, "Jessica, you still don't get it. I'm not going to pretend everything is fine anymore. I'm not going to accept being treated like a problem that needs to be solved. You created this situation. Now you're going to have to live with the consequences." She tried to argue. She said I was exaggerating, that maybe we could find a solution that worked for everyone, but I was no longer interested in negotiating. I told her she had had months to treat me with respect and had chosen the path of manipulation and cruelty. In the following days, I began to execute my exit plan. I visited 3 apartments and chose one I loved. It was small, but it had a nice view of Lincoln Park. It was close to the L train stop at Fullerton and was fairly priced. I signed the lease the same day. I started to discreetly separate my personal belongings. I didn't want to create drama or arouse suspicion, so I organized everything little by little. I set aside important documents, family photos, essential clothing, and a few items that had sentimental value. Patty helped me buy basic furniture for the apartment. Nothing elaborate, just the essentials: a bed, a dresser, a small table, 2 chairs, and some kitchenware. We wanted the place to be ready for when I decided to move. During this period, I noticed that Jessica was getting more and more nervous. Maybe she sensed that something was changing, but she didn't know exactly what. One day, as I was discreetly packing some old photos into a box, Olivia found me in my room. "Grandma," she asked in that sweet voice of hers, "are you packing?" I told her I was just organizing my things, that I had a lot of duplicate photos and wanted to give some to my sisters. She hugged me and said, "Grandma, I don't want you to leave. You're the only one who helps me with my math homework and makes grilled cheese sandwiches just the way I like them." That hug broke my heart, but it also gave me more strength to move forward. My grandchildren deserved to grow up in a family where elders were respected, not in a house where their grandmother was treated like a nuisance. Noah, though quieter than his sister, also approached me that week. "Grandma," he said while we were watching television together, "why did Mom talk to you like that on your birthday? My teacher says we should always respect our grandparents." I explained that sometimes adults say things when they're stressed, but that the important thing was for him to always remember to treat everyone with respect, especially older people. "I will always respect you, Grandma," he said, and gave me a kiss on the cheek. On Friday night, after dinner, Michael received a call from Mr. Rodriguez informing him about the collection of the debt. I saw my son turn pale as he listened to the legal details. When he hung up, he looked at me with a confused expression and asked, "Mom, what's this about an overdue debt?" Jessica, who was painting her nails on the sofa, looked up with interest. I replied calmly, "It's exactly what you heard, Michael. You have 30 days to pay me the $50,000 you owe me or give me back my house." The silence that followed was even more profound than the one at my birthday party. Jessica exploded, just as I expected she would. She yelled that I was being ridiculous, that I couldn't just kick out my family over a stupid little joke. Michael tried to mediate, asking that we talk calmly, promising that Jessica would apologize properly. But I was no longer interested in empty apologies or promises that would only last until the next humiliation. I explained that for 2 years I had tried to be part of this family, but I was always treated like a nuisance that had to be tolerated. "Jessica," I said, looking her directly in the eye. You got what you wanted. I'm not going to get in the way of the family's life anymore, but I'm also not going to continue to support your disrespect. Michael tried to argue that he had never disrespected me, but I reminded him of all the times he stayed quiet while Jessica humiliated me, all the occasions when he chose domestic peace over defending his own mother. You are my son, and you always will be, I told him, but being a mother doesn't mean I have to accept being humiliated in my own house. During the days that followed, Jessica alternated between trying to convince me it was all a misunderstanding and making threats about never letting me see the grandkids again. Michael became desperate when he discovered that $50,000 was exactly the amount of money they didn't have. They had spent all their savings on remodeling the kitchen and on their vacation to Cancun the year before. They tried to get a loan, but their financial situation didn't allow for it. Slowly, reality began to set in. They would have to leave the house. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else and went to the desk where I kept the family's important documents. I had spent the whole night thinking about every moment that had led me to this point. I remembered when Arthur and I bought our first little house in the Bridgeport neighborhood with a first-time homebuyer loan. We were so young, so full of dreams. Arthur worked at Mr. Henderson's auto shop from 6 in the morning until 8 at night, and I cleaned houses in Lincoln Park to save extra money. When Michael was born, I was just 23. Arthur was so happy he got drunk with his buddies from the shop and came home singing Frank Sinatra songs. "Clara," he'd say, hugging me, "we have our little prince now. This boy is going to be someone important in life. He's going to go to college and he won't have to work with his hands like his dad." I would reassure him, saying there was no such thing as bad work, that what mattered was being honest and hard-working. But deep down I also dreamed that Michael would have more opportunities than we did. During Michael's early years, I worked twice as hard so we could save for his education. I cleaned houses in the morning, and in the afternoons, I sold hot dogs from a cart on our street corner. Arthur would come home from the shop tired, but always eager to play with his son. On Sundays, we would go to Lincoln Park, carrying our lunch in picnic baskets because we didn't have money to eat at restaurants. But we were happy, so happy that sometimes my chest ached with how much love I felt for my family. Michael was a smart kid, always at the top of his class. When he turned 6 and started elementary school, I stopped cleaning houses so I could walk him to and from school every day. Arthur worked extra hours on Saturdays to make up for my lost income. "Honey," he'd say as we counted the week's money, "any sacrifice is worth it if our boy makes it big." And Michael did make it big. He was the valedictorian of his class, won a scholarship to study industrial engineering at the University of Illinois. When Michael graduated, Arthur and I cried with joy at the ceremony. My son looked so handsome in his cap and gown, so proud as he walked across the stage to receive his diploma. That night, we threw a party at the house with all the neighbors. Patty made her famous 7-layer dip, Mrs. Gable brought potato salad, and Mr. Henderson played his guitar late into the night. "Hey, Arthur, my friend," his buddies told him. "You've got an engineer in the family now. You've really made it." Arthur would smile and wink at me, knowing it had all been worth it. But the following years were harder than we expected. Michael got a job at an auto parts factory, but the salary wasn't as good as we had dreamed. He continued to live with us because he couldn't afford to rent an apartment on his own. I didn't complain. I liked having my son close, cooking his favorite meals, washing his work clothes. Arthur sometimes worried that Michael wasn't independent enough, but I told him that in families, people help each other, that there was no rush. When Michael met Jessica at a wedding in Cleveland, he came home so excited, telling us about the beautiful girl he'd met. "Mom," he said as I served him dinner, "she's gorgeous. She studied accounting, and her parents own a clothing store downtown." I was very happy for him. But from the first time Jessica came to our house, I felt that something wasn't right. She was polite, yes, but there was a coldness in her eyes when she spoke to me, as if she were sizing up everything she saw. During their courtship, Jessica always found excuses not to stay for dinner at our house. She'd say she had to get back to Cleveland early, that her parents were expecting her, that she had plans with her friends. When I offered her a home-cooked meal for the road, she would smile but never eat it. Michael told me not to worry, that she was just nervous because she wanted to make a good impression. But I saw the way Jessica looked at our small house, our old furniture, our simple way of life, as if it were all beneath her. The wedding was in Cleveland, in a large, elegant church. Jessica's parents, Fernando and Sylvia, hosted a reception in a very luxurious hall with uniformed waiters and food I had never tried before. Arthur felt uncomfortable all night, tugging at the collar of the new shirt we had bought, especially for the occasion. "Clara," he whispered to me as we watched the guests dance, "these people have a lot of money. I hope our son knows what he's getting into." I tried to reassure him, but deep down, I also felt that Michael and Jessica came from very different worlds. After the wedding, Michael and Jessica moved into a small apartment they rented together in a trendy part of the city. At first, everything seemed to be going well. Michael was happy. Jessica had found a job at an accounting firm, and they came to visit us on Sundays. But gradually, I noticed the visits became less frequent. When I called on the phone, Jessica always had some excuse they were too busy. They had plans with friends. Michael was tired from work. When Jessica got pregnant with Olivia, Michael came alone to give us the news. He was thrilled, talking about how he was going to be the best dad in the world, how he wanted his child to have everything he hadn't. Arthur and I were overjoyed, but when I asked when we could go see Jessica to talk about the pregnancy, Michael became uncomfortable. "Mom," he said, "Jessica wants us to respect her space during the pregnancy. She says the doctors recommended she avoid stress." Those words hurt me deeply, but I said nothing to avoid causing problems. Throughout Jessica's pregnancy, I barely saw her 3 or 4 times. When Olivia was born, Michael took us to the hospital to meet our granddaughter, but Jessica hardly said a word to me. She held the baby tightly, as if I were going to take her away, and when I asked to hold her for a moment, she said the baby was too fussy and it was better not to. Arthur noticed my sadness and squeezed my hand, but I tried to be understanding. Maybe first-time mothers were just that protective. When Olivia turned 1, things got financially tougher for Michael and Jessica. The apartment was very expensive. Jessica had stopped working to take care of the baby, and Michael's salary alone wasn't enough. That's when Michael came to ask for my help to buy a bigger house. "Mom," he said, sitting at the kitchen table where we had had so many important talks, "I know it's a lot to ask, but Jessica wants a house of her own where Olivia can grow up. If you could help us with the down payment, I'll pay you back little by little." Arthur had already passed away by then. He went in his sleep from a heart attack, so peacefully he didn't even wake up. I was left alone in the little house in Bridgeport, with the life insurance money and the savings we had accumulated over so many years. When Michael asked for my help, I didn't think twice. He was my son, my only family, and I wanted him to be happy. "It's better if I sell this house," I told him, "and we buy a big house where we can all live together. That way I can help with Olivia, and you can save money." Michael's face lit up when I proposed that. "Really, Mom? You'd do that for us?" I told him, of course, that's what family was for, to help each other. That same week, we went to look at houses in different suburbs until we found this 3-bedroom in Maple Creek. It was perfect, big, with a backyard, in a quiet and safe area for the children. I put all my money into buying it and left it in Michael's name, because I thought that way he would feel more like the man of the house. But from the first day we moved in, Jessica made it clear that I was a tolerated guest, not part of the family. She chose the master bedroom for them, the second for Olivia, and assigned me the smallest one, which faced the backyard and got noise from the neighbors. When I protested, suggesting we could perhaps organize things differently, she told me, "Clara, you don't need that much space anymore. We're young and we have more things." She changed all the decor in the living room and dining room without asking my opinion. She took down the pictures of Arthur and me that I had hung on the main wall and put them in a corner of the hallway where they were barely visible. When I told her those pictures were important to me, she replied, "Oh, Clara, this house needs to look modern. Those old photos make everything look dated." Michael was at work when that happened, and when I told him about it that night, he told me not to be so sensitive, that Jessica just wanted the house to look nice. The following months were filled with small humiliations that piled up like grains of sand. Jessica put me on a schedule for using the washing machine. I could only do my laundry on Tuesdays and Fridays in the morning. She told me I couldn't invite Patty or my other friends to the house because they made too much noise and bothered the baby. She changed the Wi-Fi password so I couldn't use it without asking her permission, And she always had some excuse for not giving it to me, that she was busy, that she had forgotten, that I should just use my cell phone data. In the kitchen, Jessica reorganized everything her way and forbade me from touching certain dishes because she said they were for important guests. When I cooked something Michael really liked, like pot roast or lasagna, she always found something to criticize: that I had used too much garlic, that the meat was too dry, that I had spent too much on the ingredients. One day I made chocolate chip cookies because I knew Olivia liked them, and Jessica scolded me, saying I shouldn't give the child so many sweets without consulting her first. But what hurt the most was how Jessica talked about me when she thought I wasn't listening. One day I was watering my plants in the backyard when I heard her talking on the phone with one of her friends. "You can't imagine how frustrating it is to live with my mother-in-law," she was saying. "She's here all day, meddling in everything, wanting to give her opinion on how to raise Olivia. And she cooks with such strange smells that the whole house stinks. I wish Michael would get around to putting her in a nursing home soon because I can't take it anymore." I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning over those cruel words. The next day, when Michael got home from work, I tried to tell him what I had heard, but he said I had surely misunderstood, that Jessica sometimes just vented to her friends but didn't mean it. "Mom," he said, taking off his work boots, "you know Jessica loves you. She's just stressed because taking care of Olivia is very tiring." When Noah was born 2 years later, I thought maybe things would get better. Jessica would have more experience as a mother. I could help more with the children. And Michael would feel more secure in his role as a father. But instead of getting better, everything got worse. Jessica became even more controlling and possessive with the children. She wouldn't let me hold Noah when he cried. She said I would spoil him if I sang him lullabies to get him to sleep. And she got annoyed if Olivia asked me to tell her stories instead of watching television. During this time, Michael worked longer and longer hours to support his growing family. He left the house at 6 in the morning and returned after 8 at night, so tired that he barely had the energy to play with the kids or talk to me. On weekends, he slept in late and watched sports on television. When I tried to talk to him about the problems I was having with Jessica, he would sigh and tell me to try to be more patient, that he already had enough worries at work. One day, when Olivia was 4 and Noah was 2, the little girl hurt her knee playing in the yard. She came running to me crying, and I picked her up to comfort her and clean the scrape. Jessica arrived at that moment and snatched the child from my arms, yelling at me, "Leave her alone, you don't know how to take care of children. It's your fault she got hurt." I explained that the girl had tripped on her own, that I was just comforting her, but Jessica kept yelling that I was careless, that the children weren't safe with me. That night, when Michael got home, Jessica told him her version of what had happened, painting me as an irresponsible grandmother who had endangered Olivia. Michael, without asking for my side of the story, told me that maybe it was better if I didn't look after the children without supervision. "Mom," he said, in that weary voice he had developed when talking about family problems, "you're not as young as you used to be. It's normal that you don't have the same reflexes." His words hurt more than all of Jessica's shouting combined. From that day on, Jessica wouldn't let me be alone with the children, not even for 5 minutes. If Michael had to go out and she went to the supermarket, she took Olivia and Noah with her, even if it was a quick trip. When I protested, telling her it was ridiculous, she would answer, "Clara, I am the mother, and I decide who takes care of my children." The way she said my children was like a slap in the face. She never said our grandchildren or the family's kids. The following years turned into a routine of small cruelties disguised as concern. Jessica bought me a senior-friendly cell phone with large numbers to make it easier to use, but it was really to control who I talked to and at what times. She gave me more age-appropriate clothes, which were ugly and old-fashioned, telling me that the colorful blouses I liked didn't look good on older ladies. She replaced my favorite shampoo with a special one for mature hair, which left my hair dull and lifeless. But the most painful thing was how the children began to change their attitude towards me. Olivia, who used to run to hug me when she got home from school, started to be more distant. When I offered her help with her homework, she would tell me her mom had said it was better for her to do things on her own. Noah, who was naturally quieter, stopped seeking me out to read him stories before bed. When I approached him, he would sometimes glance towards where Jessica was, as if he needed permission to talk to me. During these difficult years, my only comfort was Patty, my lifelong neighbor and best friend. She would come to visit when Jessica wasn't home, and I could vent to her about everything that was happening. "Clara," she would say as we drank coffee in the kitchen, "that girl is abusing you, little by little. She's using techniques to isolate you from your own family." Patty had worked at a community health center and knew about these things. "You have to stand up for yourself," she insisted, "because if you don't, you'll end up believing you deserve this treatment." But I kept thinking that if I were more patient, if I tried harder to please Jessica, things would get better. I cooked her favorite dishes even though I didn't like them. I bought expensive gifts for the children with my pension money. I never complained when she invited her family from Cleveland without telling me, and I had to sleep on the sofa so there would be enough beds. I thought that love and persistence would eventually soften her heart. The last year before my birthday had been especially difficult. Jessica had started making comments about my age in front of the children. "Your grandma is getting very old," she would tell them when I couldn't understand something on the new television or took too long to answer the phone. "Older people sometimes get confused and forget things." Olivia, who was already 15, would sometimes look at me with pity, as if I were a burden to be managed. The week before my birthday, I overheard a conversation between Michael and Jessica that chilled me to the bone. They were in their bedroom with the door ajar, and I happened to walk by as Jessica was saying, "Michael, your mom is getting worse every day. Yesterday she forgot to turn off the stove and could have burned the house down. And when Patty came over, they stayed up talking so late they woke up the kids. I think it's time we consider other options." Michael sighed and said, "What options?" Jessica replied, "There are some very good assisted living facilities out in Naperville. They have activities for seniors, medical staff, and she'd be with people her own age." In that moment, I knew that the humiliation with the broom had not been spontaneous. It had been part of a calculated plan to make me feel so unwanted, so ridiculous, that I would ask to leave myself. Jessica had been planting the seed in Michael's mind for months, preparing him for the moment they would expel me from the house I had paid for. And I, who had spent 2 years trying to earn her love, finally understood that I would never get it because she didn't want me to be part of her family. That night, lying in my small bed, I made the most important decision of my 68 years of life. I would no longer be the silent victim who accepts humiliation for the sake of peace. I would no longer beg for love in my own home. I would no longer allow myself to be treated like a piece of old, unwanted furniture. Clara Peterson had raised a son. She had worked her whole life. She had lost her husband with dignity, and now it was time to reclaim the respect she deserved, whatever the cost. The next day, while Jessica was at the salon spending the money Michael worked so hard for at the factory, I began to execute my plan. First, I went to the county clerk's office with Mr. Rodriguez and formalized the collection of the debt Michael owed me. According to the contract, he would have 30 days to pay the $50,000, or the house would definitively revert to my name. Then, I rented a small but cozy apartment on the other side of the city, far from all that bitterness. During the week, I began to discreetly move my most important belongings to the new apartment. Patty Davis, my dear friend, helped me without asking questions. She had witnessed the birthday humiliation and understood perfectly what I was doing. I took my documents, my family photos, some clothes, and the few objects that truly mattered to me. I left all the expensive furniture I had bought for our house. Jessica had always said it didn't match her taste anyway. The hardest part was talking to Olivia and Noah without arousing suspicion. My granddaughter was only 16, but she had always been more affectionate with me than her own parents. One day, when we were alone, she asked if I was okay, if her mom's joke on my birthday had hurt me badly. I told her everything was fine, but that maybe it was time for me to have my own place again. Olivia became sad, but I promised her we would see each other whenever she wanted, that she would always be welcome in my new home. On Friday night, after dinner, Michael received a call from Mr. Rodriguez informing him about the debt collection. I watched my son turn pale as he listened to the legal details. When he hung up, he looked at me with a confused expression and asked, "Mom, what's this about an overdue debt?" Jessica, who was painting her nails on the sofa, looked up with interest. I replied calmly, "It's exactly what you heard, Michael. You have 30 days to pay me the $50,000 you owe me or give me back my house." The silence that followed was even more profound than the one at my birthday party. Jessica exploded, just as I expected she would. She yelled that I was being ridiculous, that I couldn't just kick out my family over a stupid little joke. Michael tried to calm the situation, asking that we talk calmly, promising that Jessica would apologize properly. But I was no longer interested in empty apologies or promises that would only last until the next humiliation. I explained that for 2 years I had tried to be part of this family, but I was always treated like a nuisance that had to be tolerated. "Jessica," I said, looking her directly in the eye, "you got what you wanted. I'm not going to get in the way of the family's life anymore. But I'm also not going to continue to support your disrespect." Michael tried to argue that he had never disrespected me, but I reminded him of all the times he stayed quiet while Jessica humiliated me, all the occasions when he chose domestic peace over defending his own mother. "You are my son, and you always will be," I told him, "but being a mother doesn't mean I have to accept being humiliated in my own house." The following days were a strange mix of tension and liberation. Jessica tried different strategies to make me change my mind. First, she tried emotional manipulation, telling the children that Grandma was going to abandon them, that she didn't love them anymore because she was going to live alone. Olivia came to my room crying one night, asking me if it was true that I didn't love her anymore. I patiently explained that I would always love her, but that I needed to live in a place where I was treated with respect. "Grandma," Olivia said, wiping her tears, "is it because of what Mom did on your birthday?" I told her it wasn't just because of that, but because of many things that had happened over a long time. "My mom sometimes says mean things when she's mad," my granddaughter murmured, "but I know you're good, that you've always taken care of me when I'm sick, that you help me with the hard homework." That moment broke my heart, but it also gave me more strength to move forward. My grandchildren deserved to see that older people didn't have to accept mistreatment, that one had to defend oneself with dignity. Noah, though quieter, also approached me, concerned. "Grandma," he said as we watched television together, "is it true you're going to leave the house?" I explained that yes, but that didn't mean I would stop being his grandmother, that he could always visit me whenever he wanted. "Why did my mom say those mean things to you?" he asked with the honesty that children have. I told him that sometimes adults behave badly when they are stressed, but that was no excuse for being disrespectful. During that week, Jessica also tried the strategy of playing the victim. She told her friends from Cleveland that I had gone crazy and vengeful, that I was trying to destroy the family over a silly misunderstanding. She called her mother, Sylvia, crying on the phone, telling her that her evil mother-in-law wanted to leave her homeless over an innocent little joke. I overheard Sylvia suggesting she talk to a lawyer to see if there was any way to contest the debt. Michael was desperate. He went to 3 different banks trying to get a loan for $50,000, but they all told him the same thing. His salary wasn't enough to secure such a large amount, especially considering they already had credit card debt. One night he came home very late, after having asked his coworkers, his cousins, anyone who could help him for a loan. But $50,000 was a lot of money for working-class people like us. "Mom," he said, sitting next to me in the living room while Jessica was putting the kids to bed, "are you really going to do this? Are you really going to take the house from us?" His voice sounded like it did when he was a child and had done something wrong. I explained that I wasn't taking anything from them, that the house had always been mine, that they had had 2 years to treat me well and had chosen the path of humiliation. "But we're family," he said with tears in his eyes. "Exactly," I replied. "We're family, and that's why it hurts more that you've treated me this way." That same night, Jessica attempted one last strategy: intimidation. When Michael went to take a shower, she approached me in the kitchen and spoke in a low, threatening voice. "Clara," she said, "if you kick us out of this house, I will make sure you never see your grandchildren again. I'll take them far away, to Cleveland with my parents, and Michael will have to follow us. Are you willing to lose your entire family over your pride?" For the first time in 2 years, I looked her directly in the eyes without looking away. "Jessica," I said with a calmness that surprised even me, "you already took my family from me when you decided to turn my house into a place where I'm not welcome. The grandchildren you threatened to take away, you've already been pushing away from me little by little. And the son you say will leave, I already lost him when he chose to stay silent while you humiliated me. So I don't have much left to lose." Jessica's face changed when she realized her threats weren't scaring me. For 2 years, she had been used to seeing me lower my head, apologize, try to please her, no matter how she treated me. But that woman had disappeared on the day of the broom. In her place was a person who had remembered her own strength, her own dignity. During the following days, I began to move with a freedom I hadn't felt in years. I woke up early and went to the farmer's market to buy ingredients for my favorite meals. Spicy chili, just the way I liked it, not how Jessica thought was appropriate. I invited Patty over for lunch without asking anyone's permission. I called my sisters in Phoenix and talked with them for hours, laughing about things I hadn't found funny in a long time. Patty noticed the change immediately. "Clara," she said, "you seem more alive." She was right. For 2 years, I had been living like a shadow of myself, walking on eggshells in my own home, speaking softly so as not to bother anyone, hiding my tastes and opinions to avoid conflict. Now, for the first time in a long time, I felt like Clara Peterson again, not the problematic mother-in-law. That afternoon, when Jessica got home from the salon, she was annoyed to see Patty in the house. "Clara," she said in that controlled voice she used when she wanted to scold me without the children noticing. "Didn't I tell you to let me know when you were going to have visitors?" I replied that Patty was my lifelong friend and that I didn't need permission to invite her for lunch. "But this is my house too," Jessica protested. "Technically," I said with a sweet smile, "this is my house, and as long as it remains my house, I'll invite whomever I want." That night at dinner, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Michael ate in silence, obviously worried about the financial situation. Jessica picked at her food without really eating, shooting me venomous glances. The children sensed the tension but didn't fully understand what was happening. Olivia tried to make conversation, asking me about my plans for the weekend, and I told her I was going to the flea market in Evanston with Patty, that I hadn't been in years. "Can I go with you, Grandma?" Olivia asked with that hopeful voice that reminded me of Michael when he was a boy. Jessica immediately interjected. "Olivia, on Saturday you have to study for your math test." My granddaughter's face fell, and I felt a pang of pain seeing how Jessica used the children as weapons in our silent war. But I wasn't going to let that stop me anymore. "Of course you can come, sweetie," I told Olivia. "We can go in the morning and be back early so you have time to study." Jessica glared at me but couldn't protest openly without looking bad in front of the children. That small victory tasted like glory. For the first time in 2 years, I had made a decision about my grandchildren without asking for permission. On Saturday, Olivia and I had a wonderful morning at the flea market. We walked among the craft stalls. We ate corn on the cob. We watched the street performers. My granddaughter was happy, laughing, asking me questions about what life was like when I was young. "Grandma," she said as we ate hot dogs at a small plastic table, "I like it better when you're happy. Lately, you've seemed so sad." Her words touched my heart. I hadn't realized my sadness had been so obvious that my grandchildren had been watching their grandmother turn into a shadow of herself. "You know what, Olivia?" I said, taking her hand. "Sometimes adults go through difficult times, but you always have to remember that you are worth a lot and deserve to be treated with respect." She nodded seriously, as if she understood more than I expected for her age. That afternoon, when we returned home laden with bags and smiles, Jessica was waiting for us with a sour face. "Olivia," she said to her daughter without even greeting me, "I hope you studied your math like I told you to." My granddaughter, still cheerful from our outing, replied, "Mom, Grandma helped me review the equations while we were eating." She knows a lot about math because she helped my dad with his homework when he was in middle school. I saw Jessica's face fall as she realized her strategy of separating us hadn't worked. For 2 years, she had been feeding the idea that I was a useless old woman who only caused problems. But Olivia had just reminded everyone that I had my own wisdom, my own experience, my own value. It was a small but significant moment in our silent battle. During the following week, Michael made desperate attempts to get the money. He sold his car and bought a cheaper one, but that only gave him $7,000. He talked to his boss about a salary advance, but the most they could give him was $3,000. He even considered asking Jessica's parents for money. But Fernando and Sylvia, although they had a successful store in Cleveland, didn't have that amount of cash available. One night, I found him sitting in the living room, with papers scattered all over the coffee table, calculating and recalculating numbers that never gave him the result he needed. "Mom," he said without looking up from the papers, "is there really no way we can fix this? Couldn't we work out a payment plan, something that would let me pay you back slowly?" His voice sounded defeated, as if he finally understood there was no easy way out. I sat down next to him, and for a moment, I was tempted to give in, to tell him to forget everything and let's go on as before. But then I remembered the humiliation of the broom. I remembered all the nights I had cried in silence. I remembered the conversation about the nursing home I had overheard. "Michael," I said tenderly but firmly, "for 2 years, Jessica treated me like dirt in my own home, and you let her. This isn't just about money. It's about respect." "But the kids, Mom," he said, tears in his eyes. "What's going to happen to Olivia and Noah? They're not to blame for the problems between you." He was right, and that was the most painful part of the whole situation. "The kids will be fine," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "They're going to learn that their grandmother is not a person who lets herself be walked all over, that you have to defend your own dignity, and they will always know where to find me when they need me." That night, Jessica made her last attempt at manipulation. She came to my room after midnight, when everyone was asleep, and knelt by my bed as if it were a soap opera. "Clara," she said in a broken voice, "I know I've made mistakes, that I've been very hard on you at times, but please, think of your grandchildren. They adore you, and you're going to destroy this family because of your pride." I looked at her in the dim light of the room. This woman who for 2 years had made me feel invisible in my own home, and I felt a mix of pity and determination. "Jessica," I said softly, "I'm not destroying anything. You destroyed our relationship from the first day you came to this house thinking I was a nuisance you had to get rid of. Now you're going to get what you always wanted, a house without the annoying mother-in-law. It's just going to be somewhere else." The last weekend before the deadline, the house was filled with frantic activity. Michael and Jessica packed their things with the help of some relatives from Cleveland who came in a moving truck. Olivia cried as she packed her stuffed animals into cardboard boxes, and Noah looked confused by all the commotion. I stayed in my room most of the time, but I could hear the tense conversations, the reproaches, the arguments about what to take and what to leave. Patty came to keep me company during those difficult days. "Clara," she said as we drank coffee and watched them load furniture into the truck from the window, "are you sure this is what you want?" I told her yes, that for the first time in 2 years, I was sure of something. "It's just so sad to see the family breaking up," Patty murmured. "Sometimes families have to break apart so they can heal," I replied. "Sometimes true love means letting go." On the last day, when only their personal suitcases were left, Olivia came to my room to say goodbye. She was crying, and she hugged me so tightly I thought she would break my ribs. "Grandma," she said between sobs, "I don't want to go. Why can't Mom just say she's really sorry, and we can all stay together?" I explained that some things couldn't be fixed with just words, that sometimes time needed to pass for people to understand what they had lost. Miguel also came to say goodbye, quieter but just as sad. "Grandma," he said as I smoothed his hair, "are you going to be okay living alone?" I assured him I would, that I had lived alone before and knew how to take care of myself very well. "Can we come visit you at your new place?" he asked hopefully. "Of course, sweetie," I said. "You will always be welcome in my house. Always." Michael was the last to say goodbye. He came to my room when everyone else was waiting for him in the truck. He looked defeated, as if he had aged 10 years in 30 days. "Mom," he said, not daring to look me in the eye, "I know I failed as a son. I know I should have defended you more, that I should have set boundaries from the beginning. But please, don't close the door completely. Maybe one day we can fix this." I hugged him tightly. This son I had raised with so much love and sacrifice, and I told him, "Michael, I'm not punishing you. I'm teaching you that all actions have consequences, that you can't let anyone, not even family, disrespect you. When you learn that lesson, when you can guarantee that your home will be a place where your mother is respected, then we can talk." When the truck drove away down the street, taking my family with it, I stood in the doorway of my house feeling a strange mix of pain and liberation. Patty put a hand on my shoulder and asked, "How do you feel, my friend?" I took a deep breath, smelling the air, now free of tension, and said, "I feel like Clara Peterson again. It hurts, but I feel whole." The first few days after they left were the hardest. The house felt too big, too quiet. Every corner held a memory. The table where Olivia did her homework, the armchair where Noah watched his cartoons, the kitchen where Michael drank his coffee before leaving for work. But there were also the painful memories. The spot where Jessica had handed me the broom. The living room where I had so often felt like an intruder in my own home. Patty came every day to keep me company, bringing homemade food and her invaluable companionship. "Clara," she said as we cleaned the house together, which now seemed like a museum, "do you have any regrets?" It was a difficult question. Of course, it hurt to see my grandchildren's empty beds. Of course, I missed the noise of family life. But when I remembered the peace I felt waking up without fearing a new humiliation, when I thought about being able to invite anyone I wanted without asking permission, I knew I had made the right decision. During the first week, Michael called me 3 times. The first 2 calls were quick, awkward, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. On the 3rd call, his voice sounded more broken. "Mom," he said, "the kids are really sad. Olivia cries every night, and Noah keeps asking when we're going back home." Those words broke my heart, but I remained firm. "Tell them their grandmother loves them very much, but sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions so that everyone can learn important lessons." "What lesson, Mom?" Michael asked in a tired voice. "The lesson that respect is not optional in a family. The lesson that you can't let anyone, not even your wife, humiliate your mother. The lesson that defending those you love sometimes requires courage." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Michael hung up without saying goodbye. As the days went by, I began to establish new routines. I got up early and went for a walk in the park near the house, something I hadn't done in years because Jessica always had some reason why I shouldn't go out alone. I went to the market whenever I wanted. I bought whatever I craved. I cooked my favorite dishes without worrying if anyone else liked them or not. One morning, while watering my chili plants in the backyard, I heard a knock at the door. It was Sylvia, Jessica's mother, who had come all the way from Cleveland. I invited her in, although I knew she wasn't there for a friendly visit. She was an elegant woman, accustomed to getting what she wanted through diplomacy and social pressure. "Mrs. Peterson," she said as we had coffee in the living room, "I came to speak with you, woman to woman, mother to mother." She looked uncomfortable, as if she wasn't used to people not yielding to her requests. "My daughter Jessica is very sorry for what happened on your birthday. She told me it was just a joke that went wrong, that she never meant to hurt your feelings." I listened patiently to this woman who had raised a daughter who thought she could treat older people like old furniture. "Mrs. Garcia," I said when she finished her rehearsed speech, "how many years have you been married?" She told me 45 years. "And in all those years, did your mother-in-law ever humiliate you in front of other people? Did she treat you like a burden? Did she talk about putting you in a nursing home?" Her face turned red, and she admitted that no, her mother-in-law had always treated her with respect. "Then you understand what I have lived through for 2 years, I continued. "Your daughter didn't make a joke that went wrong. Your daughter has been planning to get rid of me since the first day she set foot in this house. The broom was just the straw that broke the camel's back." Sylvia tried to defend Jessica, saying she was a good mother, a devoted wife, but I interrupted her. "She can be all of those things and still be a bad daughter-in-law. The 2 things don't cancel each other out." Sylvia left that afternoon without getting what she came for, but before she left, she said something that stuck with me. "Mrs. Peterson, I understand your pain, but think about the fact that you are punishing the entire family for the mistakes of one person." I replied, "Mrs. Garcia, I'm not punishing anyone. I am protecting my dignity. If you had raised Jessica right, if Michael had learned to defend his mother, if the grandchildren had seen examples of respect instead of humiliation, this conversation wouldn't be happening." 2 weeks after they left, Olivia called me, crying, from a friend's phone. "Grandma," she said between sobs, "I miss our house so much. I miss talking to you at night. I miss you helping me with my homework." Her voice broke me inside, but I tried to stay strong. I miss you very much too, sweetie. But remember what I told you. Sometimes sad things have to happen so that people learn to value what they have. Has my mom learned her lesson yet? She asked with that innocent hope that children have. I don't know, Olivia. Only she can know that. But in the meantime, you can come visit me whenever you want. My door will always be open for you and Noah. I gave her my new address and promised her that the next time she came, we would make grilled cheese sandwiches together like in the old days. That same week, Patty told me she had seen Michael at the supermarket. He looks so thin, Clara, she said as we folded clean laundry, and so sad. He said hello, but he looked ashamed, as if he didn't know what to say to me. I asked if he had asked about me, and Patty said, yes. He wanted to know if I was okay, if I needed anything. I told him you were doing great, that you seemed more peaceful than you have in a long time. His eyes filled with tears. A month after the eviction, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Noah, who had come alone on the train from their new apartment. When I opened the door and saw him standing there with his school backpack, I thought my heart was going to beat out of my chest. Grandma, he said with that shy smile of his, I came to visit you like you said I could. I hugged him so tightly he protested that I was choking him, but he was laughing as he did. We went inside, and he looked around curiously. It feels different, he said. Quieter. I made him his favorite snack, grilled cheese sandwiches with sharp cheddar, and we sat at the kitchen table like old times. How is everyone? I asked, though it pained me a little to hear the answer. My dad is working a lot of overtime to pay the rent on the new apartment, he told me as he ate. My mom cries sometimes when she thinks we don't see her, and Olivia says it's all her fault, that if she hadn't been so rude to you, we'd still be living in the nice house. His words confirmed what I already knew. Actions have consequences for the whole family, not just for the person who commits them. Noah, I said, taking his small hands, none of this is your fault or Olivia's. Adults make decisions, and those decisions have results. Your mom decided to treat me badly. Your dad decided to allow it, and I decided I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. We all have to live with the consequences of our choices. He nodded seriously, as if he understood more than was appropriate for his age. Before he left, Noah asked me something that surprised me. Grandma, are you mad at us? I explained that no, my anger was with the adults who hadn't known how to behave, but that I loved him and Olivia just as much as ever. Then why can't you forgive my mom and come back home? His question was so innocent, so full of hope, that I struggled to answer. Sweetie, I said gently, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and going back isn't always the answer. Your mom needs to truly understand what she did wrong, not just feel bad because she lost the nice house. When she can tell me that she understands why her words and actions hurt me, when she can promise me she will never treat an older person like that again, then we can talk about forgiveness. Over the next few months, life took on a different rhythm. Michael called me every 2 weeks. Short conversations where he'd ask about my health and tell me how the kids were doing. He never mentioned Jessica directly, but I could read between the lines. They had had to move to a smaller apartment in a less safe neighborhood. Michael had had to borrow money for the security deposit and the first few months' rent. Jessica had had to go back to work part-time at an accounting firm near their new home. Olivia visited me every couple of weeks, always arriving with stories from school, questions about life, and that teenage need for a confidant who would listen without judgment. During these visits, she would tell me, without realizing it, what life was like in her new home. Mom doesn't get her nails done as much anymore, she'd say as we made grilled cheese. She says it's too expensive to go to the salon every week. Or, Dad comes home so tired from work. Sometimes he falls asleep watching TV on the sofa. One day, 6 months after the eviction, Patty came to my house with news. Clara, she said with a strange expression, I ran into Jessica at the supermarket last night. My heart sped up a little, waiting to hear what had happened. She looked different, Patty continued. More humble, more tired. She greeted me and asked about you. I asked what she had said, and Patty replied, I told her you were doing great, that you looked happy and peaceful. She got sad and said, tell her that I think about her a lot. Those words stirred something inside me, but not enough to change my position. Thinking about me was not the same as understanding what she had done wrong. Feeling bad about the consequences of her actions was not the same as genuinely regretting having hurt another person. Jessica had to reach a deeper understanding before I would consider any kind of reconciliation. On my 69th birthday, exactly 1 year after the humiliation with the broom, I decided to have a small celebration. I invited Patty, my sisters who came from Phoenix, and a few neighbors who had become my friends during this year of freedom. I made my famous chili, a 7-layer dip, and a 3-layer cake I had learned to make from watching videos online. The party was small, but full of genuine affection. All the women present were people who respected me, who valued my company, who had never made me feel like a burden. When it came time for gifts, Patty brought me a beautiful hand-knit shawl. My sisters gave me a rose bush for my yard, and the neighbors presented me with a basket full of homemade goods. There were no brooms, no humiliations, no fake smiles. Just the human warmth of people who genuinely cared about me. As I blew out the candles on my cake, I thought about the difference between this celebration and the one from the previous year. The contrast was so stark, it almost seemed like I was comparing the lives of two different people. That same night, after all the guests had left, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was Michael, and his voice sounded different, more mature, more reflective. "Mom," he said, "I know it's your birthday. I just wanted to call and say that I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened last year." I waited in silence, sensing that there was something different about this conversation. "Mom," he continued, "I think I finally understand what you were trying to teach me. Over this past year, I've seen how Jessica behaves when things don't go her way. I've seen how she treats people she considers beneath her, and I've realized that's how I let her treat you for 2 years." His words went straight to my heart, because I felt that for the first time, my son truly understood what had happened. "I've been thinking about Dad," Michael went on, "about how he always stood up for you, how he never let anyone disrespect you, and I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't learn that lesson, that I was a coward who chose comfort over doing the right thing." Those were the words I had been waiting to hear for a whole year, the acknowledgement that the problem hadn't just been Jessica's, but his as well. "And Jessica?" I asked softly. "Does she understand what happened too?" There was a long pause before Michael answered. "Mom, Jessica is learning. This year has been very hard for her, but I think she's finally understanding that actions have consequences. The other day, she asked me if I thought you could ever forgive us. That question resonated with me long after we hung up the phone. Was I ready to forgive? Had I achieved my goal of teaching the lesson that needed to be taught? Over this year, I had regained my dignity, my independence, my sense of self-worth. I had proven that I was not a helpless old woman who let herself be walked all over. But I had also paid a high emotional price: the separation from my grandchildren, the breaking of family unity, the loneliness of silent nights. A week after my birthday, I received a letter that completely surprised me. It was from Jessica, handwritten on nice stationery, and it had arrived by certified mail. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and began to read the words that had taken a year to arrive. "Dear Clara," the letter began, "I know I have no right to ask you to read this, but I need to tell you some things I should have said a long time ago." I continued reading, and for the first time in a year, I heard the voice of a different Jessica, one who seemed to have learned something important during these difficult months. "I want to apologize, not just for the broom on your birthday, but for every day for 2 years that I made you feel unwelcome in your own home. I want to apologize for all the times I humiliated you, minimized your opinions, spoke of you as if you were a burden. I want to apologize for pushing your grandchildren away from you, for poisoning our family relationship with my selfishness and my lack of respect." The letter went on for 3 pages, detailing specifically every type of mistreatment she had inflicted on me, acknowledging the damage she had caused, and taking full responsibility for her actions. There were no excuses, no justifications, no attempts to downplay what she had done. It was a genuine apology, the kind of acknowledgement I had been waiting for so long. "This year, I have learned what it feels like to be rejected, what it's like not to have a place where you truly belong," Jessica wrote on the last page. "I have learned what it's like to work hard just to pay the basic bills, what it's like to worry about money every day. I have learned what it feels like when you are treated as if you are less important than others. And I finally understand that was exactly what I was doing to you every single day. The letter ended with a proposal I didn't expect. I am not asking you to forgive us immediately. I am not asking you to come back and live with us as if nothing happened. But I am asking for a chance to show you that I have changed, that I have learned to value and respect older people, especially the mother of the man I love. If you would give us a second chance, I promise you that your home would be a place where you would be honored, respected, and loved as you deserve. After reading the letter 3 times, I folded it carefully and put it away in my drawer of important documents. It was the kind of apology I had been waiting for, but I also knew that words were easy to write. What really mattered was whether Jessica had truly changed, whether she had learned the lesson in a way that would last forever, not just until things became comfortable for her again. 2 months after receiving Jessica's letter, I decided it was time to respond, not with words, but with actions. I called Michael and proposed a family meeting in a neutral place, the local park, where we used to take the kids when they were little. "But Mom," he said, his voice hopeful, "does this mean you're considering?" I told him it meant I was willing to listen, nothing more. On Sunday afternoon, I arrived at the park 15 minutes before the agreed-upon time. I found a bench under the shade of an old oak tree and sat down to wait. When I saw my family approaching down the gravel path, my heart clenched. Michael looked thinner but more mature. Olivia had grown and looked more like a young lady. Noah walked closer to his dad, as if seeking protection. And Jessica. Jessica looked different. Her clothes were simpler, her makeup more discreet, and something in her posture told me that this year had been a true school of humility for her. The children ran to me first, hugging me with that desperate urgency they have when they've missed someone terribly. "Grandma," Olivia said, squeezing me tight. "I thought we'd never get to do this again." Noah took my hand and didn't let go for the entire conversation that followed. Michael sat next to me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him as the boy he once was, vulnerable, repentant, hoping his mom would forgive him. Jessica remained standing in front of us, not daring to get too close, as if she understood she had no right to assume familiarity. "Clara," Jessica said, in a voice I recognized, but that sounded different, softer, more humble. "Thank you for giving us this chance to speak with you." This was not the same arrogant woman who had handed me a broom a year ago. This person seemed to have truly learned what humility meant. "I want you to know," she continued, "that every word in my letter was sincere. This year taught me what you felt for 2 years in your own home. I learned what it's like to work hard and still not be able to pay all the bills. I learned what it's like to live with the constant worry of money. I learned what it's like to feel small and insignificant." Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of self-pity. They were tears of true repentance. "But most importantly," she went on, as Michael nodded by her side, "I learned what it feels like when your own children look at you with disappointment. When Olivia asked me why I had been so cruel to her grandma, when Noah told me he missed living in the nice house where his grandma was happy, I understood the real damage I had caused. Not just to you, but to our entire family." I looked at my grandchildren, who were listening to this conversation with the seriousness of children who have matured too quickly because of adult conflicts. "And what have you two learned this year?" I asked them gently. Olivia spoke first. "I learned that no matter how angry a person is, they should never disrespect their grandparents, and that when someone is cruel to family, everyone suffers the consequences." Noah added with his quiet wisdom, "I learned that my grandma is very strong, and that sometimes strong people have to walk away to teach important lessons." Michael finally spoke, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Mom, I learned that failing as a son hurts more than any financial problem. I learned that my dad taught me to defend my family, but I didn't pay attention to that lesson until it was too late. I learned that true love sometimes means facing uncomfortable truths." We sat in silence for several minutes, listening to the sound of other children playing on the swings, watching other families who didn't know how lucky they were to be together without drama. Finally, Jessica came closer and knelt in front of me, taking my hands in hers. "Clara," she said, looking me directly in the eyes, "if you give me a second chance, I promise you that my home will be a place where you are honored as the matriarch you are, where your grandchildren learn from your wisdom, where your experience is valued, where your comfort is our priority. I'm not asking you to trust me immediately. I'm asking you to let me earn that trust, day by day. I looked around at this broken family circle that was showing signs of true healing. Jessica had learned humility the hard way. Michael had understood his responsibility as a son. The grandchildren had seen that actions have consequences, but also that family love can survive the toughest conflicts. "All right," I said finally, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "We can try again, but this time with clear rules. This time with mutual respect from day one. This time with the understanding that family is a gift that can be lost if it's not taken care of." Olivia shouted with joy, and Noah smiled for the first time in months. Michael hugged me as if he were the little boy who once ran into my arms when he got hurt, and Jessica cried, not with relief, but with genuine gratitude for a second chance she knew she didn't deserve, but was determined to honor. 6 months later, I am writing this from my room in our house in Maple Creek. It's the same room as before, but now it's different. Jessica knocks before entering. She asks my opinion on family decisions, and she has learned to make chili exactly the way I like it. Michael stands up for me in family conversations and never again allows anyone to talk about me as if I were a burden. The grandchildren seek me out for advice, for help with homework, for the hugs that only grandmothers know how to give. It wasn't easy to rebuild the trust. There were awkward moments, difficult conversations, and the constant need to establish new boundaries. But for the first time in years, I live in a house where I am respected, valued, and genuinely loved. Sometimes families need to break completely in order to truly heal. The broom that Jessica gave me on that fateful day is still in the laundry room. I didn't throw it away. I kept it as a reminder that I will never again allow anyone to treat me with less respect than I deserve. Sometimes the greatest gift is learning when to walk away and when to return with dignity. We're curious to know how far this story has traveled. Where are you all watching from? Let us know in the comments below.